All right, this is Midichlorians, an alliance of science, mythology, and magic by me, Scotty Jayro. Super excited to have all of you here. My name is Scott Jayro, technically, like legally, binding, it's that. I'm the host of the Bombadcast. It's a Star Wars podcast that goes live every Thursday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube. Very niche, very funny, very weird stuff. We look at things from a very different angle in terms of what we talk about, how we approach most things. Obviously, Star Wars is a big part of it. We also look at things like really weird VHSs we find and things that make us laugh and all the things that I would consider whimsical in Star Wars. And that's really important when it comes to this. So, I have a co-host, his name's Jerry the Canon Junkie Cable. He's not here to host the panel today. Obviously, this is more of my endeavor. That's a photo of him and his daughter, Eleanor. And of course, that's us right there hanging out, looking cool. Also, another shout out to my wife, Katie. She's fantastic. She's right now preparing for the bar. She takes the bar on Monday in New Orleans. So I'm from Baton Rouge, and it's been a lot leading up to it. And if it wasn't for her, I would not be up here talking to y'all. There's a little bit of, her pushing me to get out my comfort zone to do this kind of stuff. And I'm so thankful for her and everything she's done for me. But most importantly, she helped me meet Jerry in Chicago back at Celebration 2019. So I owe a lot to her. Another thing, too. Me. Shout out to me. Glad I could be here, right? If it wasn't for that little boy right there who loved Pokemon cards and, Star Wars growing up in the late 90s, he wouldn't be the person, I would be the person I am today without him. So I'm happy that I could share this topic and what I love about this topic with all of you, because it's something that I guess I really fell in love with when I was a kid, and I didn't realize how much it would affect my life later. Of course, thank you to my favorite support staff back there, the Atlanta Comic Convention. Shout out to him. High five. Applause. Yay! Thank you, all 6 of you. I appreciate that. But no, I'm very happy. Ryan Call, who put this event together, reached out to me and he asked me if I can give this presentation here, and I'm super excited to be here. And if you're not from Atlanta, I'm not from Louisiana. I traveled here yesterday to be here, and I'm super thrilled to be able to spend some time with y'all, and I promise, I will make it worth it. So, I'm a middle school teacher. I know a few of y'all heard that before y'all walked in, before I got started. I've been teaching at 6 years now at a small private Catholic school in Gonzales, Louisiana. I teach STEM. I taught science for a very long time. That'll play a lot into this. I've won a lot of awards, a lot of acknowledgement from my school, my community, and I love what I do. I have a great job. This summertime I can do stuff like this, so it's a wonderful thing to have that opportunity. And for those that don't know, and if you want to get a copy, I have copies for sale. I was going to sell them for $10 a piece, but I might actually sell them cheaper if y'all want to buy them. I've got copies of my book, all about the research into Midi-chlorians and what they are. I brought about 17 copies. I'll sign them, obviously. The foreword was written by my friend Alden Diaz. It was reviewed by Alex David from Star Wars Explained and Kim Knapsack from Force Center. So if you have an Amazon account and you'd rather buy it that way, you got, pack your bags, whatever it is. That's a QR code for that as well. And I'll show that towards the end if you want to get a copy of it, because it's all about this. Really, Midichlorians. Everyone's like, why? Why this? I don't understand it. It's not something that I think is that interesting, obviously. For me personally, I love it. I gave a presentation at Star Wars Celebration Japan in April, and it was a full house. It was 170 people in attendance. I was very beside myself. It was a profound experience for me. But I realized that people actually want to learn more about this topic. And there's a lot of misinformation about there on how this topic functions and what this topic actually is. And I'm thankful to be acknowledged for my research on it and what I looked into it. I mean, it's pretty dense. It's not something that's going to be as easy as just, well, they read this. And I'll show you actually what I get into. Here's some photos from the convention itself. It was about, I would say, 40% Japanese, speakers. So I gave them, or I guess listeners. I gave them all copies of the presentation, all converted into, kanji for them. So they were actually able to follow along with the presentation as I was up here. Because, inclusivity is very important. People need to feel welcomed, right? Especially when it comes to like this kind of event, and hopefully y'all feel the same exact way you're in here. But yeah, Midichlorians are bomb bad, y'all. I love them. I'm very proud of this book. I'm proud of what it's gotten me, to go and do. This being one of them. Very, very happy to be here. So, just for a second, I do this with my middle school kids. Let's gauge our understanding of what Midichlorians are. So, just take a second, think about it. If you fully understand them, you're like, okay, I know what they mean thematically, ideologically, philosophically. I know them in terms of lore. You can give me a thumbs up. Thumbs in the middle if you're like, I kind of know, but I want to be kind of more aware, right? Or like thumbs down if like you're totally lost. Can I see some thumbs? Everyone is usually middle or down. Yeah, okay, that's fair. So when it comes to that, I hope by the end of it, everyone's thumbs up. That's the point, right? I don't want anyone to feel left out or confused, and that's why I'm here. So someone asked me, why? Like, why write this book? Why write this panel? Why do all this? Why travel, across the states to come talk about this? In 2024, I made a 2-hour-long video essay on Midichlorians. It was pretty intense. It was 200 slides, 222 slides, 200 hours, 76-page script, 24 direct sources. It is all cited APA format. I don't mess around. I could show you. Look at this. APA, baby. You will use it. All of them. So I wanted people to realize, yes, you can argue with me about it, but there's a lot of direct quotes from people, especially the creator, George Lucas. So we got to make sure we, acknowledge that. So after really reflecting about it, after really thinking about what this means, on a super deep level, I resonated with it in terms of my emotional aspect of Star Wars, in terms of my philosophical, outlook on life, and ideologically, they to me represent the very nature of what I see our universe, our real life as. They reflect how the world, and we have opportunities to bring positivity in the world. And this presentation, the whole goal of it is to explain why, and we'll look at it from about 6 different points of views. So before we dive deep into this presentation, before we actually looked at it, obviously people have oversimplified it in different ways, including the ideas of power levels, which they are not. It's a false way of looking at it. It's not like an XP chart, when you're playing Pokemon. It's not that. It's a philosophical framework, a scientific analogy, and of course a mythological symbol. And yes, it is a storytelling device, which we'll look at. So George Lucas himself once said, when I was 18, I was in an automobile accident. I had a near-death experience. I was taken away from the scene, presumed dead. And it wasn't until I reached the hospital that doctors revived my heartbeat. This is the kind of experience that molds a person's beliefs, and most of my conclusions since then have come from observing life. If I've learned anything, it's that these questions are as noble for us as they would be for a tree or for an ant. Scholars who study myth and religion have found that same sensibility throughout history. Life cannot be explained. Life is beyond reason. There is no why. One might think of life as a large organism with us playing a small symbiotic part of it. On a spiritual level, we may be connected in ways that transcend life and death. I believe we share a collective life force, one that connects people, animals, plants, and even the universe itself. We can't understand it with words, but I believe we all know it exists, even if it's beyond our conscious thoughts. If we have a purpose, it's to fit into a healthy, symbiotic relationship with other life forms. Ultimately, we're all trying to live in harmony with this life force. What life is really about comes down to compassion and love, helping others without expectations, giving without receiving. Every religion, every prophet shares this exact same message. This quote comes directly from George Lucas himself. It's in the Star Wars Archive novels by Paul Duncan. It's the foreword of that novel. It came out in 2022. His perspective of this is woven through all about the Force in Star Wars. It has, a lot to do with midichlorians, and I'll kind of go into why. With that in mind, let's look at it from a philosophical perspective. So, as a vessel for themes and philosophy. His near-death experience at 18 profoundly shaped his views on life. Upon reflection, he realized that life is a noble and deeply symbiotic, a theme woven throughout his creation of the Force. In the Phantom Menace, Midichlorians are introduced as a link between the living and the mystical, and it pissed a lot of people off, and I don't know why. They symbolize more than just power. They embody interconnectedness, reflecting Lucas' belief in unity of existence. So, real-life science, real quick for y'all. There are 3 ways in which symbiotic relationships form. I teach this to my 7th graders. The 3 ways are mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. And when you watch The Phantom Menace, you can see this reflected in each part of the movie. Mutualism, much like this, is when 2 things benefit from each other. The butterfly and the flower. One gets food, the other one ends up getting pollinated. You've got right there, I think a bull shark with a remora, fish on it. The remora attaches to the shark. Whenever the shark eats, the remora gets the little scraps of food. Great, that's commensalism. One benefits, one's not really benefiting or getting harmed by it. However, now let's think about Palpatine here. You've got a mosquito, lands on you, drains your blood. Who's benefited? Not you, the mosquito. This is all throughout the movie. Mutualism is most evident in the relationship between the Naboo and the Gungans. Both are affected by the Trade Federation's invasion, but they initially see themselves as separate. Obi-Wan Kenobi emphasizes this interdependence when he tells Boss Nass this. I'm sure y'all could probably quote it.
What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand this.
We shall not care about that.
Incredible. Their eventual alliance reflects the larger concept of the balance in the Force, the living force versus the cosmic force. They exist in a cyclical cycle. They are in a relationship. The wellspring of life, which we'll look at right here, feeds, and it's the origin of the Force, and then it returns back to the cosmic force. It transforms over and over and over and over again. And we'll look at this in a much deeper way in lore. This theme, of course, is later explored in the Clone Wars. Who has seen this arc? Anyone seen this arc? Where they go in the Clone Wars Season 6, the finale. For those that don't remember or don't know, this is the very last thing George Lucas ever worked on in Star Wars. It released on Netflix in 2011, I believe, 2012, and it was remarkable. The whole entire arc is all about life after death and returning back to life. It is probably the best thing he's written in terms of Star Wars, for me personally. Death is only the beginning. That's a huge theme in Star Wars, and you all probably know that. This idea of symbiosis is not limited to fiction. However, there is a wonderful concept called the Gaia Principle. Has anyone ever heard of the Gaia Principle in here? Anyone? It's a beautiful principle. I'll teach you about it. Type of philosophy. James T. Lovelock, he introduced this principle that the Earth functions as a self-regulating living organism where every element, including me, you, the birds, everything, you name it, water, all these things interact, and it contributes to the balance of what we call life. Though rooted in science, it carries a profound philosophical implications. It challenges the idea of human control over nature. In this Western world that we live in here in the United States, we always seem to dominate nature, but if you travel to the East, that's not the case, and we'll look at that. And of course, before colonization happened in America, this was very much the case in Native American culture. This perspective aligns truly with it. Always, in most Native American cultures, treated the earth as a sacred living being. We acknowledged it. The Lakota story of the white buffalo calf woman emphasized the spiritual connection between humans and the natural world, where nature's gifts, such as water, plants, animals, are sacred elements to, of course, honor and protect. The Hindu philosophy, of course, with the Rita, refers to the same exact thing. Humanity's role is to maintain balance and align with this order. Shinto belief in kami, for those that like anime, like the Ghibli films, they always talk about spirits and the spiritual elements that end up inhabiting things like rivers, mountains, trees. These traditions, of course, emphasize the cooperation with nature and reject the idea that humans are separate from it. I experienced this firsthand when I was in Celebration, Japan. I went to Kyoto, and I was absolutely blown away by the fact that in some of these temples, y'all, there is no way to tell where art begins and nature ends. You just can't tell. In the Shinto, there's a text that really captures this idea perfectly. The process of nature cannot be evil. Every natural impulse is not to be corrected, but sublimated, beautified. The cooperation with nature creates something truly magnificent, and of course, it became a tremendous experience I'll never forget. I was awestruck. The Gaia Principle reflects this deeply, okay? It teaches us that the earth is a living entity, and it thrives on balance and mutual interdependence. This philosophical and scientific insights challenge us to rethink our approach to the environment, not as something to dominate, but something to nurture and care for. In The Last Jedi, you see this perfectly explained when Luke gives his first lesson to Rey. This is important to live in harmony, acknowledge life, acknowledge death, know that they're there. This has been around way longer than we have, right? And it's going to continue to be long after we leave. So, in summary for this one portion, George Lucas saw the Force as a reflection of life's duality. The living force tied to our immediate actions and beings, and the cosmic force, a vast pool of energy where all life will return back into. Midichlorians are that bridge. They're that tangible thing we can acknowledge. They are the thing that connects both those concepts together, symbolizing balance of individuality and, of course, interconnectedness. So, it's not just Star Wars, right? Some of you may be religious in here. Some of you may have some very deep philosophies on how life functions. And this all comes from, the origin of us as a people, right? Midichlorians is a mythological and symbolic motif. The concept of an invisible plane of existence in death is like the one unity between all religions and mythologies. Death, burial rituals, and notion of life beyond our own existence lie at the heart of how mythology and religions are formed. So, for those that don't know, Joseph Campbell was a really profound anthropological researcher that really contributed to our understanding of how storytelling works and how mythology functions. And George Lucas was a student of his, and he read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which of course changed his life. This introduced the idea of the monomyth, the hero's journey. Think Frodo, think Luke Skywalker, think maybe Harry Potter. All these people are heroes to us because of the arcs that they go through. Even someone like Jesus Christ, right? All these figures are figures in terms of belief and story, and they are supposed to allow us to understand what is right and what is wrong. And we'll look at this. Campbell is my favorite, I guess you could say, orator and teacher of all time. I wore this 3-piece suit because I want to be like him, and I got this at JCPenney, and I wanted to look fly. So, with that being said, the whole point of this is to reconcile the invisible with the visible. How can we understand where someone goes when they die? Where does that energy go? And Star Wars, Midichlorians serve that purpose. They're that bridge. Let's take a closer look. Campbell's idea of death as a gateway to mythology is clearly present in Star Wars. The Force itself operates as an invisible plane supported by Midichlorians, which connect the physical and the metaphysical aspects. We're going to watch a few video clips together. Joseph Campbell is right here, and that's Bill Moyers. Joseph Campbell is the one being asked the questions, and Bill Moyers is the interviewer. But they talk about how consciousness works, what happens to your body, as you age, and how you can identify with your consciousness rather than your actual aging body. So, they look at the invisible plane of existence, the origins of mythology, explaining how early myths were linked to graves and the contemplation of life and death, before underscoring its role in societal myths, by affirming each individual's connection to something larger, be it a social group or a broader landscape.
And then there is that final passage through the dark gate.
Well, that's no problem at all. The problem in middle life, when the body has reached its climax of power and begins to lose it, is to identify the vehicle. And when you can do that, and this is something I learned from my myths, what am I? Am I the bulb that carries the light, or am I the light of which the bulb is a vehicle? And this body is a vehicle of consciousness. And if you can identify with the whole thing drops off, and consciousness rejoins consciousness. I mean, it's no longer in this particular environment.
And
So he ended up dying a few years after that. This was recorded in 1986. I think he died in 88 or 87, maybe. But this is their transcription. If you have any sort of hearing loss, and I didn't get a translator for this, that's for y'all if you want to read through it. It's also mentioned completely in my book as well. So we'll keep going on. This next one's great.
you say that the image of death is the beginning of mythology. What do you mean? How is that?
Well, all I can say to that is that the earliest evidence we have of anything like mythological thinking is associated with grave burials.
And they suggest what? That women saw life and then they didn't see it and they wondered about it?
It must have been. I mean, one has only to, imagine what one's own experience would be. The person was alive and warm before you and talking to you. He's now lying there, getting cold, beginning to rot. Something was there that isn't there, and where is it? Now, animals have this experience, certainly, of their companions dying and so forth. But there's no evidence that they've had any further thoughts about it. Also, before the time of Neanderthal man, it's in his period that the first burials appeared, of which we have evidence, people were dying and they were just thrown away. But here there's a concern.
So some things have obviously changed since then. We know that elephants do have types of burial rituals where they will go back and return to where the bodies once were of their former loved ones and walk around them. So these things have, of course, changed. This research is almost technically is 40 years old now. And this last clip is going to look at a few other things, and we're going to keep tying all this stuff together.
Or,
What does it say?
burials, my friend has died and he survived. The animals that I've killed must also survive. I must make some kind of atonement relationship to them. The indication is of the notion of a plane of being that's behind the visible plane, and which is somehow supportive of the visible one, to which we have to relate. I would say that's the basic theme of all mythology.
That there is a world?
That there is a visible an invisible plane supporting the... That differs from time to time and place to place.
What we don't know supports what we do know.
That's right.
So obviously that's something that I firmly believe George took with it, the idea that, there is an energy that supports there's an invisible energy that supports the living energy that we all experience. Having explored this mythological significance of Midichlorians, as a symbol, they bridge the material and the spiritual. That is the whole point of them. It becomes clear that the role of Star Wars mirrors humanity's age-old attempts to understand the existence through both myth and science. Mythology seeks to reconcile the visible and the invisible, and Midichlorians, the scientific aspect, is a narrative framework where these things intersect. They join together. They make the ethereal force more tangible, more understandable for people like us. This symbolism goes a lot deeper, though. They are a biological theory. They are the idea that the Force isn't just abstract. It's not just a mystical phenomena, which I think other people would beg to argue, but all the proof is here. One idea is that it's intimately tied to life itself. This biological foundation offers a fascinating parallel to our real-world experiences and exploration of life's interconnectedness. So, to finally get to it, what are midichlorians, Scott? Well, I'll tell you. They are described as a microscopic organism that allows beings to sense and interact with the Force. This idea does align with real-world scientific pursuits, such as microbiomes. Right now in your gut, right now this moment, you have a microbiome that is very sensitive and very important, and it helps regulate everything in your body. Symbiosis, of course, and of course even leading into quantum biology. So it helps us understand the things that bind all of life together. This next section will explore midichlorians from a biological point of view. So, there's a very important reason why I have these sperm cells and egg cells here. We'll get to that when we talk about Anakin. Every organism is connected to the Force by simply being alive. That's how we're all connected. This connection isn't controlled by midichlorians, but by an organism's sensitivity to them, which is openness to nature and acknowledgement of the Force's will. So just for a moment, if you want to close your eyes, you can. I probably will. Right now, in this moment, as much as the control you think you have over your body, you don't. Okay? There is extremely intricate work happening right now in your cells, your conscious and your subconscious. Actions are governed by all these biological processes. When you're hungry, y'all, your cells tell you, I need energy, I'm hungry. When you're active, your cells demand oxygen and release waste. When you're tired, they trigger recovery to help you repair tissues while you sleep. When you're injured, they clot blood. Tell me, and think about it after this. When you're under stress, they release adrenaline. Tell me, who's in control? Are you in control? No. You have to be able to let go of that for yourself. They are working around the clock to silently keep you alive, and that is this dynamic exchange. That is what we see in Star Wars. That is what midichlorians are. They're a miracle. It's a miracle you're all here being able to hang out with me and being able to understand and enjoy all of this. George Lucas often drew parallels between science and myth. He said midichlorians are, of course, we made a joke earlier, they are essentially mitochondria, so in a weird way. But the thing is, midichlorians serve more of as a purpose to connect and interact with the Force. This symbiotic relationship reflects the interconnectedness of all life. So, he said midichlorians are the equivalent of mitochondria in living organisms and photosynthesis in plants. I simply combine them for easier consumption by the viewer. Mitochondria create the energy that turns one cell into two cells. I like to think that life is unified and exists everywhere in the universe. It controls things, but you can also control it. That's why I split it into the living and the cosmic force. Think about Qui-Gon. When we die, we lose our persona, but our energy is assimilated into the cosmic force. It goes right back in. Lucas also incorporated wills. This is the one thing I'm still iffy about. His sequel trilogy is supposed to get into all this, but this is the one thing I'm like, ooh. The wills are like the fungi, the amoebas, the bacteria that already live, parts of them in you. They're 100 times more numerous than midichlorians, and they outnumber human cells. The wills feed on the force, and midichlorians work for them, creating a symbiotic hierarchy that reflects the interconnectedness of all life. So the wills work with midichlorians work with you, you work with the things around you. It is all a bigger picture. And of course, this mythological idea. You're just doing science. Well, this isn't science. It's just as mythical as anything else in Star Wars. It sounds scientific, but it's fiction. And we'll look at that actually from a really cool perspective when we look at the Force priestesses. So, he stressed that balance within these microscopic organisms are important. One-cell organisms need balance, good and bad. If they go out of balance, life is extinguished and the dark side takes over. This biological concept of midichlorians deepens the mythology of the Force, emphasizing the symbiotic relationships that underpin existence. Through midichlorians and the wills, Lucas reinforces the overarching themes of balance, harmony, and connection at the heart of Star Wars. By bridging the tangible and the mystical, he presents the Force as a unifying life force and a reflection of nature's order. There was a really interesting series that kind of caused a lot of stir in the fandom. It was James Cameron interviewing George Lucas for this AMC special, like the history of science fiction, and it was great. There were two things that released from it. There was the show that came out, and then, of course, there was the companion novel. All this information is all going based on the companion novel. He did not air this part. In the conversation, they talk about the mythical aspects of the universe, the biological aspects of the Star Wars universe, talking about predestination as a blend of genetics and hate and fate. But what I love is, classic George, people say don't put biology into it. We all have talent. Those of us with talent know we're different from other people. Think about people that are really good with math. Not me. Not good at it. Right? Okay? People that are really athletic. Not me. Not good at it. Someone that's a teacher and you got to be in charge of a classroom, I can be pretty damn good at it. Right? But that's all of us. We're all different. We're all unique. We all have special talents that make us who we are. And that's super important. George acknowledges that. My favorite scene in the Phantom Menace right here. There's always a bigger fish. That wasn't just a joke. That talks about the whole idea of symbiosis in this one film. It's crucial, right? The ecological message underpinning all of Star Wars is this. What you do to somebody here affects somebody there. It comes back to you, kind of like karma. You have to understand that you're part of a very big picture. And that's all those movies are supposed to teach you. So, reflecting on this, he kind of course, had some gripes with selling the company in 2012. If I'd held on to the company, I could have done it. Of course, a lot of fans would have hated it. And just like the Phantom Menace, but at least the whole story would have been told from beginning to end. I, for one, would have loved it. I love the sequel trilogy, but I would have loved more midichlorians. The microbiotic world and the wills are central to his sequel trilogy plans. You can read that up. He said midichlorians are mitochondria. It's a combination of mitochondria and chlorophyll, chlorophyll being the mitochondria of plant life. This conversation shifts in nature to extraterrestrial possibilities. He, of course, believes they're going to be bacteria. So, not going to be like a full-grown alien. It's going to be more or less a microbiotic organism that we discover. Of course, I like this part. James Cameron sums this up beautifully. Humans have a competitive, aggressive side, but also a cooperative side. And George, of course, took that and wrote it large across the entire galaxy. So, I teach this to my kids. I'm going to teach it to you. Maybe you might have forgotten. But I love this. This idea that even on a small level, you can make a difference. And the interconnectedness of all life is super crucial. And it plays a very large role into the future of, stories in Star Wars. And, of course, things that we, take in. For example, my favorite thing. We go from atoms. Atoms make up molecules. Molecules make up compounds. Compounds make up cells. Cells make up tissue. Tissues make up organs. Organ makes up body systems. Organ systems. Organ systems make up the organism. One organism makes up, itself. Multiple of that one makes up a population, including plants and trees and other animals. Community, including the air and everything around it. Ecosystem, including the entire world of biosphere. It's incredible that we've gone this entire route as a society, as a collective of living things. And this is the whole theme of what we look at, midichlorians. We're all connected, no matter what we think. And of course, some would tell you different, but I'm not going to. George has done a beautiful job, and Star Wars has done a beautiful job with keeping the Force as a beautiful and important thing that ties it all together. And nothing has contradicted that yet. And we'll talk about that. By the way, that's my favorite logo. It's like the prequel logo. What about y'all? Love that one. Everyone doing okay? We're doing good? Yeah? Are y'all drawn in? Are we locked in, chat? That's the chat. All right, so we'll look at this midichlorian thing from a ton of different stories, including things that the internet might want you to believe are not good, and we'll go against that. We'll look at things from Plagueis, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, The Bad Batch, The Acolyte, and starting off with my favorite EU novel, Darth Plagueis. So it was written by James Luceno, and I'll tell you about James Luceno. He has written a bunch of really good Star Wars novels, but this one takes it. He was the one, probably the last author that wrote before the acquisition happened. So this technically is still considered Legends, but it's kind of more of an approach of the dark side in terms of like how they control midichlorians, and we'll look at why it's still somewhat canon. So for those that don't know, and this is from an interview from theforce.net from January 10th, 2012, George Lucas had a lot of control over this book. Unlike most of the other projects, he, of course, talked to James Luceno, and he wanted to make Plagueis a non-human character. And of course, Lucas approved that suggestion and provided artist renderings from concept art as well of different characters that were, from monolith, so they're munes. But this is the important part. That's Howard Rothman. Howard Rothman is like George's second in command. He is like huge at Lucas licensing, and he, James Luceno, did not have to go through Del Rey to get this book defined, right? So when you write a Star Wars novel, of course this is not official, this is all self-published for me personally, but you have to go through Del Rey to edit it, and then they get approval from Lucasfilm, and then it's all good, and you've got people like Pablo Hidalgo who end up checking it and sourcing it and make sure everything's all canonically accurate. However, Luceno, when he wrote this novel, he didn't have to do any of that. He had Howard Rothman to answer directly to. And Howard Rothman will put those notes on George Lucas's desk. George would read through it, blah, blah, blah. That's good. And there were some things that, were denied and approved. One of the big key themes is that Plagueis is obsessed with midichlorians, okay? He was skeptical of them. Well, I'm sorry. James Luceno was skeptical of them, of course, because he didn't understand them. He didn't have, what we have now, all this supplemental material. He had to write the supplemental material. But he wanted to portray Plagueis as a researcher and a mystic. So it added kind of this complexity to the lore of midichlorians, which I think were pretty cool. And of course, in the interview, he talks about, and I'm sure you remember this if you've watched them, but he talked and worked directly with Dave Filoni and adding characters from Plagueis into the Clone Wars and vice versa. And the inclusion of Mother Talzin, the inclusion of Darth Maul and his origin story, all of that is told in Darth Plagueis. And some of that has been a change from here and there. But Darth Plagueis is still obviously, influencing current content with Secret of the Sith and that recent tease in The Acolyte around, it was actually a year ago yesterday, or 2 days ago. So in this novel, it's pretty intense stuff. It's all about Plagueis, observing the influence of midichlorians on, different organisms. This first one, that's his master, Darth Tenebris, and he watches how the midichlorians interacts and, attempts to manipulate them as his master is dying. So there's this whole idea of how can I have control over these things? And we'll look at this. So Plagueis reflects on the limitations of the conventional midichlorian blood test. He has surpassed through his heightened connection to the Force. He can sense people in a room and go, oh, okay, that person has high potential. They have a high midichlorian count. But he also contemplates the inevitability of midichlorian dispersal at death, how he cannot control that. This leads him to study the Sith knowledge of essence transfer, which we will go back to later. Very important, The Rise of Skywalker, which emphasizes the dangers of tampering with life's natural order. This story goes into the ideas that midichlorians resist manipulation that might threaten the balance of the Force, but can be compelled to serve the needs of the body, particularly weak-willed beings. Plagueis and Sidious experiments highlight the desire of immortality and control over life itself. Think about Palpatine. He's always trying to find his, second way to come back. The Sith seek immortality and creation for all the wrong reasons. Plagueis and Sidious attempt to manipulate midichlorians to shift the balance of the Force irreversibly to the dark side. In that ambitious attempt, they're controlling the Force. The Force struck back. And of course, made who we know as Anakin Skywalker. The Force said, you can't do that. We're going to make a very powerful being born of the Force itself. This, of course, underscores the unpredictability of midichlorians in shaping destiny and the consequences of their manipulation, which we'll come back to. So the climax, the big part, I'm sure you've heard this when you watch Revenge of the Sith, is the idea of what happens, right? Sidious, of course, kills Plagueis in his sleep. His failed attempt to control life and death is kind of ironic. But the moment is filled with irony as Plagueis, who believes he could dominate the Force, becomes a victim of his own philosophy. This story highlights the flaws in Plagueis' understanding of the Force and the consequence of its manipulation, leaving readers and people in here to reflect on the delicate balance between ambition and natural order. These themes enhance the lore of Midichlorians while inviting deeper reflections on power, control, and the essence of life itself. This is the part where I had a few people go, whoa, like at the presentation. And this is the one that I think is super important. Obviously, this book approaches the Phantom Menace from a very different point of view, more the dark side point of view. It makes the Nemoidians look very stupid, but that's kind of the point. And of course, the big thing which we'll look at is the opposite of this. What's the opposite of how the Jedi interact versus the Sith? And that is going to be what we see in season 6 of the Clone Wars finale. This is huge, though. This 5-minute scene. How many of y'all love this scene? Great scene. Thank you for the support. Stay long, man. But yes, so this scene right here is huge. J.J. Abrams also cited as his favorite scene in the prequels. It is a 5-minute and 5-minute and 20 second? I don't know. Get your math quickly in my head. But yeah, 5-minute, 20-second like scene of just dialogue. Just pure dialogue, all about how, in different ways, Palpatine came into power. This was originally set in Palpatine's office. This is all from the creator's commentary on the 2011 Blu-ray. This is how nerdy I am. This is all from the creator's commentary on the 2011 Blu-ray of Revenge of the Sith. And it was Rick McCallum, George Lucas, Ben Burt, John Knoll. It was a bunch of people talking about it. And they talk about this centerpiece called Squid Lake. This was developed later. This was originally set in Palpatine's office. But I like to think that this whole thing of Squid Lake with the Mon Calamari flying in and out of orbs symbolizes something deeper. To me, in the big wow moment, this symbolizes the creation of life. This imagery of water spheres evokes the joining of sperm and egg cells while they sit there and talk about life, the creation of life, how to manipulate life. That is a visual symbol of that. Joining of sperm and egg cells. I was sitting there in 2019 waiting for the Rise of Skywalker to be released. It was November. My boy Eric Cotterman sitting next to me, and I'm like, I had been teaching biology and science like very in-depthly. We just totally got to this unit. And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, oh my God, that's what George did. He like showed us that's what life looks like when it's made. That's the theme of this whole entire scene. And of course, it's a critical moment. It exploits Anakin's fears. His fears of loss. And I've always said this too. I don't know if you'll agree with me. Revenge of the Sith is the best episode of That's So Raven. Who's seen That's So Raven? Okay, what do you know about That's So Raven? What happens in those shows? Can you hear it?
She can see into the future.
But what does she try to do every time?
Change it.
And what happens?
It doesn't work.
Causes it. That is all of Revenge of the Sith. It's a giant episode of That's So Raven. The whole movie is sitting there like, how do I save Padme from dying? I don't understand. And then he causes her to die because he does everything he can to manipulate and change the Force. This is where Palpatine gets into him. Rick McCallum, the best producer of any Star Wars projects, all 3 of the prequels, he even says in the commentary, and canon, of course, will tell you different, and people that I know, like Matt Martin, will tell you different too. But he straight up says it in the commentary that the entire time, this is all about Anakin's origins. This is Palpatine straight up looking at him when he says, control over life. Looking at Anakin. They made Anakin Skywalker, maybe not on purpose. Maybe it was the Force that struck back. But they know that he is the product of their actions. This reinforces that Palpatine and Darth Plagueis has played a giant role in Anakin's creation. This scene represents the final cinematic exploration of Midichlorians. Unfortunately, we've only heard that phrase once since, and it was in The Bad Batch by Asajj Ventress. And we'll look at like M counts and all that crap. I just don't like that word. It doesn't work for me. Another one, my favorite. The Acolyte. Many would think and tell you that, it contradicted George's vision, but I don't think they're looking deep enough. I don't think they care to look deep enough. They're just trying to rage bait you. This is really important. These set of twins in the Acolyte are a complete and a wonderful parallel to Anakin Skywalker and how that is the same case. You are with me, I am with you, always one, but born as two. As above sits the stars, below lies the seas. I give you, you, and you give me, me. The Acolyte, of course, explores a deep Force-related themes, focusing on life's creation and midichlorian manipulation. Central to its story are twin sisters, Osha and May Aniseya, sisters, whose origins are tied to a Force virgins and a deliberate manipulation of life itself. The influence of Plagueis serves as a phantom narrative backbone, exploring the balance between light and dark through the creation and destruction of life. Mother Aniseya, her philosophy of the thread as a unifying force echoes Qui-Gon Jinn's teachings of the symbiotic connection between living things. Pull the thread, change everything. It ties you to your destiny. It binds you to others. The power of one, the power of two. This reframes the force as an interconnected web that can be manipulated to alter existence. Think Palpatine, think Plagueis. When she tells the twins, what the thread has tied together, no one can separate. But what does Mother Coral say in response? And what happens if the Jedi discover how you created them? These twins are not twins, chat. Okay? Torben's revelation. Even identical twins would have different symbiotes. This is impossible without some kind of manipulation. Links the twins' shared symbiotes, likely Midichlorians, to their creation. His statement, the M count is very high. The M count is very high. Their symbiotes were the same. Suggests that Osha and May were intentionally created. This mirrors Anakin Skywalker's mysterious conception and ties to the Sith experiments in life's creation. However, this is what people were mad about. This does not negate Anakin's unique role. He was born entirely by the Force. It wasn't like someone manipulated Shmi's womb to have him there. Osha and May, however, were manipulated by the Force. Their shared symbiotes confirm their existence as a virgins in the Force, shaped by unnatural means. The stranger's cryptid phase, the power of two, evokes a couple of different things. The dyad in the Rise of Skywalker, and of course the rule of two. It hints the stranger's motives aligning with Plagueis' ambitions to control midichlorians, and Torben's observation, a virgins could create life like we have not seen on this planet. Explicitly, the twins tie the existence of Plagueis' methods, and of course, my favorite whole line, the big finale that came up a year ago this week. You are not twins. You're not even sisters. She created life. She created your lives. I believe she used the Force to create you and Osha. Solidifies this connection to midichlorian manipulation. Only a virgins could create that type of power, underlying the rarity of such an act. But most importantly, the whole idea that we have with the strangers worried about how they'll find out how powerful, of course, Osha is. And that ties directly into what we see coming later when Plagueis straight up shows up. He's there the whole time. Did he have a part of this? I don't know. The show got canceled, unfortunately. This theme from the Acolyte, of course, serves as a really good precursor for the Sith schemes in the Skywalker saga, offering compelling exploration of the Force's role in the life, destiny, and the eternal conflict between light and dark. On the topic of twins, there's one really interesting one that is often overlooked, and I'm sure a couple of you have not thought about this. Padme was pregnant with twins. Duh, Luke and Leia, we know that. We've been there forever. But there was a bunch of really cool, unused concept art that never made it into the movie in terms of story and in terms of importance. And it was made by Ian McCaig right here. He thought, well, if Padme was pregnant with twins, those twins were full of midichlorians, right? What does that look like? So he developed 3 unused story concepts to show Padme struggling with this. This first one's where she had visions of Anakin being rescued by droids on Mustafar, and she wouldn't know why she had these visions. Another one, sleepwalking manifestations of the Force, like she could levitate rocks in her sleep. This next one's my favorite. Here's an image of Yoda consoling Padme going through, the pains of pregnancy. But Yoda was unable to, assist her because within her, they've got 2 of the most powerful beings in the Force right now, inside her womb. She's finally experiencing what it's like to have midichlorians in her, and she doesn't know what to do with it. So, and unfortunately, I don't know if you agree with me, Padme has taken a huge back burner in terms of canon, and that's not cool with me. I want more Padme stuff. Do y'all agree? Anyone agree with that? Sure. Padme is awesome. That being said, these things were scrapped. They were not used. But it's always been a speculated thing in the fan base. Did Padme have any Force sensitivity? And I think during her pregnancy, she must have. She had to, right? And of course, would shift into something a little more different. The one that everyone watched growing up as a kid, usually. Death is only the beginning. Midichlorians were not dropped in this movie, A New Hope, or the original Star Wars 1977, but they have been there since. And I'll tell you why. When Luke is piloting that X-Wing, about to blow up the Death Star, the first one, use the Force, Luke. This disembodied voice tells this man to turn off his targeting computer, and he closes his eyes, and he fires that proton torpedo, and he blows up the Death Star. Amazing, right? That is the Force. That is this interaction between the living and the cosmic Force. This gets deeper in The Empire Strikes Back, when Obi-Wan straight up shows up out of nowhere on Hoth after he's attacked by the Wampa, And he's kind of giving this deeper connection between the living force and the cosmic force. He can manifest. He can show up. One of the best moments in all of Star Wars, my all-time favorite monologue. I have this monologue on a poster in my classroom. When Luke fails to lift his X-Wing from the swamp, Yoda, of course, gives him these crucial lines. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And as well, you should not. For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere, even between the land and the ship. While Yoda's words don't mention midichlorians, they offer a valuable perspective on the broader understanding of the Force. Yoda stresses that the Force is not limited to physical size or form, but exists as a universal energy connecting all living things. This aligns with the idea that the Force is both mystical and biological, an energy that flows from the Force itself. Well, how did he learn this? How did he learn to understand this? Where did this manifest at? And we'll see it right here. In the finale of Season 6 of Clone Wars, I said earlier, this is the last story George Lucas ever officially contributed to in all of Star Wars. This is it. This is his magnum opus. This is the story that, to me, summarizes this entire presentation, but most importantly, how he felt about the Force. This whole season finale of Season 6 looks at all this from a different perspective. The first episode and voices Yoda encounters Qui-Gon Jinn, who explains the nature of the Force. I'm a manifestation of the Force, a force that consists of two parts. Living beings generate living force, which in turn powers the wellspring that is the cosmic force. This establishes this beautiful foundational relationship between the living beings and the Force, and of course, the Force itself. Of course, Qui-Gon goes on to say, all energy from the living force, from all things that ever lived, feeds into the cosmic force, binding everything and communicating to us through Midichlorians. What the world? What's a Midichlorian? We'll look at that. This reveals that Midichlorians are not merely scientific entities, but essential to the spiritual fabric of the universe. They symbolize interconnectedness and the cyclical nature of existence. In the episode Destiny, Yoda is directed by Qui-Gon Jinn to a mysterious planet where he meets the Force priestesses, and one of them explains. Let's see. Oh, no, it's the next video. Straight from George's mouth and Dave Filoni's hand. This is incredible. My favorite line is, this is what your science calls midichlorians. I don't know if you ever thought about that, but science is great. Science is a way to quantify and explain and look at something. But it's still a miracle, right? It's still incredible that it functions and helps us and allows us to understand the world around us. And of course, she says here, at death, in order for you to preserve your identity, you must know yourself, your true self, and then let go. Think about Ben Solo. Think about everyone that, of course, has died and become one with the Force. Understanding the connection between midichlorians and the Force is crucial for Yoda's journey. You will learn to preserve your life force, thus manifest a consciousness that will allow you to commune with the living after death. This lesson emphasizes the perspective from the Jedi. The Jedi, of course, see that death is not an end, but a transformation. And Serenity's words illustrate how life and death are part of a greater balance. The Jedi seek to understand. What do the Sith do? The exact opposite. How can I control life? How can I manipulate life? How can I find a way to anchor my life to something? It could be in the sense of an object, essence transfer. All they want to do is live. They cling desperately to it. Think about Vader. Arms and legs cut off, burnt to death. He's been through hell, y'all. Literal hell. But he clings to life because that's the dark side way. The same thing with Padme as well. He tries to keep Padme alive. In doing so, he kills her. This is the difference between the Jedi and the Sith. The Jedi want renewal, balance, and the ability to transcend death. The Sith, however, is a path of isolation, despair, detachment from the Force's natural cycle. Ultimately, the relationship with the Jedi and the Force is the concept of immortality, essential to understanding the deeper philosophical and metaphysical aspects of Star Wars. The ability to transcend death is closely tied to one's comprehension of the Force. The Jedi achieve this through balance and harmony, and the Sith's refusal to let go leads to stagnation and suffering. This is one of the best examples of it. One of my favorite shows was Kenobi. Kenobi had to go through a lot in that show. He had to forgive himself. He had to know who his true side was, and how he did it was taking care of these two children, Luke and Leia. And of course, the entire time, Qui-Gon, be with me, be with me. And Qui-Gon doesn't show up until he realized who he was. He had gone through a transformation of character. Obi-Wan forgave himself. Obi-Wan fought Vader one last time and understood that wasn't Anakin anymore. That was someone else. That was Darth Vader. Darth Vader has taken over Anakin. He acknowledges that. And Qui-Gon responds with, I was always here, Obi-Wan. You just weren't ready to see. The Force is ever present. It's important. But if you're an individual and you're not ready to understand that, you cannot connect with it. Until you are, you can. Further insight is provided in the Master and Apprentice short story by Claudia Gray. This is released in the 40 Points of View storytelling that came out in 2017 that looked at different parts of the original story from all these different perspectives. And Qui-Gon had a story. And they talk about the idea of life and where life comes from and what this looks like and what it is. So, we'll see that. This reinforces the Jedi's belief in mortality that isn't about clinging to life, but about returning to the Force. Where Obi-Wan, where all things are unified, Obi-Wan's self-sacrifice in A New Hope, becoming a Force ghost, to guide Luke, exemplifies this understanding. Here's the line. Qui-Gon allows his awareness to spread outward until he is one again with the Force. As Obi-Wan will soon learn, the most beautiful form of mastery is the art of letting go. That's something I struggle with every day. Of course, true immortality for the Jedi is found released in the physical form, Mordu the Force. This theme of transcendent death takes darker turn when the Empire, of course, under rule of Palpatine and someone else, seeks to control and manipulate life itself. How many of y'all have watched Bad Batch? Anyone watch Bad Batch? Excellent show. We'll look at Mount Tantus, everything. So long before The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, the Empire has experimented with cloning and Midichlorian manipulation, and that all takes place during the Bad Batch. There's a project called Project Necromancer. How much time do I have left? I'm doing good. I got 9 minutes, so I'm going to go quickly. And Project Necromancer is the whole idea of keeping someone alive through midichlorian manipulation. All beings possess midichlorians, just so you can just so you can leave learning that. Anakin had the highest recorded M count, but even such high value of M counts only indicates potential. It does not indicate mastery of the Force. Think about Omega. Omega had M count. She had midichlorians in her blood, but she couldn't really necessarily use them, which is really important. These M counts degrade during cloning and renders clones incapable of accessing the Force. This project focused on two key components, Omega and Force-sensitive children. So they would take the blood of these Force-sensitive children, put it in clones, and try to clone someone, something, and that, of course, ended up being Palpatine, we know later, through the Rise of Skywalker. It's a plan that he had planned for a long time. It's Plan B, huge Plan B. Of course, Royce Hemlock right there, he's bad, he's not a good guy. He had people go after, Force-sensitive children and able to take their blood and use them for experimentation. And even something like General Grievous had, high M-count blood go through his body at one point, and it still didn't work. The Force was not recognizing or acknowledging them for the fact that it was being manipulated. Of course, Palpatine's own clones, like Dathan, Rey's father, this is from the Rise of Skywalker novelization, same exact thing. He had no Force abilities. However, his granddaughter did. Omega's significance lies in her genetic capability, which allows for successful M-count retention during cloning. And of course, we got a little guy right there who ends up bringing all this back into the fold. We have Moff Gideon, who's also obsessed with continuing life after death, just like Palpatine was. And he used this little cutie as a way to do it. The Grogu was one of the best things ever added to Star Wars. I can argue that for the rest of my life because of this thing alone. It shows us how the Force functions in the eyes of a child, in the eyes of a small organism. And it's essential to the Empire's dark side. In the Siege, Chapter 12, Dr. Pershing states, I highly doubt we'll find a donor with a higher M count. We have exhausted our initial supply of blood, highlighting the Empire's desperation to harness Grogu's Force sensitivity. The goal is to create Force-sensitive beings mirroring the Sith's desire to control life and death. Moff Gideon's fixation on Grogu's blood directly parallels the Sith's experiments in cloning and life manipulation as a path to immortality. This, of course, is fully seen in The Rise of Skywalker, where we have Ray Carson's novelization that breaks down what happens to Palpatine at the moment of his death. Falling. The Emperor called all the dark power of the Force to thrust his consciousness far away. His mind jolted into new awareness and a new body, a painful one, a temporary one. And of course, we see that in the very opening of that movie story. Of course, Palpatine's trying to stay alive. And of course, in this, we know that Palpatine's genetic clone, nothing worked, but their efforts were not entirely in vain. One genetic strain cast lived, thrived even. A not-so-quite identical clone, his son, but he was a useless, powerless failure. And this is where we get Rise Skywalker tying this entire story. The Sith choose to leave the corruption and the ultimate destruction. This theme further explores here. Rey's connection with the living and the cosmic force is deeply intertwined with the dyad, which is a credible principle. The idea that she shares this force relationship with Ben Solo, embodying the themes of balance, selflessness, and immortality. Her victory is shaped by her bond with past Jedi, and Ben Solo's life force transfers, highlighting the relationship between the living, the cosmic force, and, of course, Midichlorians themselves. In the finale of this movie, the force dyad between Rey and Ben is beyond what typical force users can achieve. Their Midichlorians resonate on a deeper level, allowing them to perform extraordinary feats, such as passing objects through space and transferring their life energy. The Secret Sith novel that came out, I think like 4 years ago, kind of goes into this, talking about how they have an unbreakable bond. The living force, of course, connects all beings in the present moment, and Rey taps into that when she calls the force in her greatest time of need. And of course, all the Jedi respond. Every Jedi who has ever lived lives in you. These voices reflect the ongoing cycle of life and death. This connects Rey to all the generations of Jedi through the living force. How does the cosmic force play into this? It's them working together. The cosmic force governs the universe's overall flow, connecting past, present, and future. It reflects destiny and sets the stage for Rey's ultimate role in the galaxy. As Sidious states, a dyad allows for power like life itself, tied to Rey's purpose of restoring balance in the galaxy. And her victory over Palpatine does come at a cost. She dies, right? But what, of course, happens? She has the living force transferred completely into her, fulfilling the entire story of the prequels in this one moment. The transfer of Ben Solo's life force to Rey represents the ultimate act of selflessness, underscores the balance of life and death within the Force. As Secrets of the Sith describes, the dyad's strength includes the ability to heal and restore life. But this power always comes at a cost. Ben sacrifices Rey and restores balance to the Force. His death is not just a loss, but an act of redemption, correcting past mistakes that Anakin made and realigning the Force. This self-sacrifice reflects the larger truth that the Force requires balance between life and death. An eternal cycle where one life's end leads to another life's renewal. That's Rey's final act. Everything about the Force comes together in this one moment. Okay, I got a few more seconds to go through the rest of this. So the finale, the big part, the Midichlorians, the meditation on life and the Force. George Lucas' profound reflections on life and consciousness resonate deeply with the thematic narrative of Midichlorians within the Force. In his words, Lucas emphasizes the unknowable nature of existence, noting that questions about life are mysterious for humans as they were for a tree or an ant. This sentiment perfectly mirrors the elusive and enigmatic nature of Midichlorians. Lucas' belief that life is akin to a large organism aligns with the portrayal of Midichlorians as an interconnected thread that unites individuals, animals, plants, and the universe itself. Viewed through this lens, Midichlorians become more than a narrative device. They symbolize the bridge between science and spirituality, and the individual and the collective, the tangible and the mystical. Midichlorians invite us to reflect on our own place in the universe. In the real world, our bodies are these rare ecosystems, and they're full of symbiotic relationships. His analogy encourages us to contemplate the profound symbiosis that binds us all, reminding us of Yoda's timeless wisdom. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Through the lens of Midichlorians, we glimpse the luminous connections that link every single living being. Thank you. Did y'all like that? If you want to copy my book, I'll be outside selling them. I'll sell them for like $5 a piece. I just need to get rid of them. I don't want to fly back with them. $5 a piece. Venmo, you name it, I'll be outside, okay? Thank you all again for coming. You want to scan that here? Oh, here's all my APA citations. Just letting you know. This is all rooted in research. This is no bullshit. But anyway, thank you so much. Stay bombed.